everybody, and welcome to Strategy Stories from the Real World, a show where we look inside at how leaders outside of Silicon Valley and the Fortune 1000 make tough and thoughtful strategic decisions. My name is Erica Olson, and I'll be your host today. So welcome back to our series that's focused on big, bold visions, one of my favorite topics. In each show, we'll be digging into how leaders set and achieve their big, bold visions for success and how it helps them lead their organizations. Today, I'm welcoming our guest, Phil Keil. Phil is the Director of Strategy and a Principal for the Zweig Group. He's an Air Force veteran, and thank you so much, Phil, for your service, whose impressive background includes organizational management, military training, supply chain, physics, and engineering. His degrees in engineering, physics, and he has an MBA focused on entrepreneurship and innovation. So let's just say, everybody, he's really, really smart. His organization, the Zweig Group, is one of the most trusted consulting firms in the architectural, engineering, and consulting industry. They specialize in strategic planning, mergers and acquisitions, risk management, and executive search for their clients. And they also happen to be one of our strategic partners. So we are so lucky and blessed to work with Phil and have him on our show today. I can't wait to hear the valuable leadership insights he's going to share with us. Thanks for being with us today, Phil.
Thanks, Erica. Super glad to be here.
So let's jump in. You're the Director of Strategy, one of my favorite topics, after my own heart, of course, for almost 4 years. I always like to ask, what's your leadership style? And, how does it feel to be part of your organization?
So to give people some insight, if you're familiar with personality testing, personality profiles, if you take a look at kind of a 16personalities.com or a Myers-Briggs kind of look, my personality would fit into the assertive executive, so something like an ESTJ. And another way to look at it, predictive index, which is more of a behavioral assessment. They have behavioral and cognitive assessments, but I'm somewhere in the neighborhood of controller or strategist. And so feel free to Google those things. If you don't know what that means, if you do, fantastic. I just communicated way more about myself personally than I could say in 10 minutes here. So, but my leadership style itself, I think, is somewhere in the intersection between servant leadership, authoritative leadership, and democratic styles. That's kind of where I tend to most naturally fit. Of course, you've got to stretch and you've got to kind of change your leadership style depending on the scenario, the environment, the purpose. But that's where I most naturally live. So being a part of our organization is, the first thing that comes to mind is maybe exhilarating or exciting, because we are growing and it's incredible. We're seeing growth. We're a very dynamic team where forge your own way is one of our values, and we really truly live that and give people opportunity to figure out how do they contribute to the larger vision and mission and the culture of our organization. That's something that's really important to us, as people that can really plug into those ideas, that believe what we believe. It also feels very rewarding, because you're able to see tangible results of the effort that you put in. We're innovating, we're investing in some really big things this year. And so it's kind of this energizing, electrifying, and exhilarating kind of feel within our organization right now. And, that's maybe rare for a 35-plus-year-old organization, but it's something we're seeing some incredible progress.
That is awesome. I love that. I love how you started with the Myers-Briggs and the leadership predictive index. That's always super great. And I will say, working with your clients as a partner of yours and with your team, they are a testament to everything that you just said. So that's awesome.
Oh, thank you.
And kind of with that, I think organizations that have been around for the double digits is rarefied air. So kudos. So, to that point, what's the next 35 years look like? What is the big, bold vision for the Zweig Group?
Yeah, so I'll share our vision and our mission. It's succinct enough that makes sense, number one, but I also like to think of it as a story, right? There's this hero's journey of an organization, and it maybe kind of evolves or changes, particularly over the course of 3+ decades. But we've struck something, I think, just incredible, and something that could be everlasting. And so, in telling that story, I'll kind of share both of those. And we exist really to elevate the industry as leaders in driving performance and purpose for the AEC universe. And that's really what it's all about. So there's and elevate, and it's not the traditional necessarily, not the traditional vision statement that you would think about. But I like to break some boundaries and break some rules and not be overly academic in how we approach certain things, as long as the form and the function, the essentials are there, right? And so with that elevate the industry vision, there are several pillars that are kind of around that include things like promotion and diversity and education and change and celebration and those types of things. And so as we kind of inculcate this as a part of our culture and how we talk about it as a team, it really starts to paint that picture of what does an elevated industry look like, and what does that mean? I mean, it's this continuous striving for something better, and how that interacts and intersects with the work that we do is just incredible to watch. Because one of the cool thing about ideas is that when it gets into someone else's mind, they make it their own. And then what that elevate the industry can mean, or could mean, should mean, ought to mean, can really change and evolve over time. And so it's been super powerful for us. Personally speaking, kind of my own leadership, my own kind of purpose or passion is really about our people and those that we work with, that they're showing up happy and fulfilled, celebrated. It's one of those, we work in this really cool industry. So my background as an engineer and physicist mirrors a lot of kind of the similar, I guess, what would be the word for it? Similar passions or similar profiles or types of celebrations that people would find exciting or enticing. But what I find is, you look back and we know Albert Einstein, we know Nikola Tesla, we know all of these great heroes of the past that were in this science, tech, engineering kind of space. And you really struggle these days to identify that. I think the closest we've got is Elon Musk and maybe Steve Jobs, right? And I think we're missing some of that connection to some of just the really cool, impactful, world-changing kind of work that the people that we serve are all about, and what gets them excited, and the capabilities and how intelligent they are. So we want to be the only choice for those types of individuals. We want to be kind of this preeminent thought leader type of organization that is a hub between practitioners, academia, partners like OnStrategy, and vendors for this. I'm referring to it as not as an industry per se, but as a universe, this universe of individuals that kind of believe what we believe and are striving to achieve similar goals and objectives.
So Phil, you talked so much about people and how important it is to have your team engaged and inspired. And part of that is your team believing in the vision. So anything that you did in particular to get buy-in from your team on elevating the industry as the destination for Zweig?
Yeah, it was. So it's interesting. So this was something that we adopted about 4 or 5 years ago now, I suppose, is our new vision statement. And our last vision certainly wasn't as inspiring, I don't think. And when our CEO, Chad Kleinens, we hold this conference every year. It used to be known as the Hot Firm Conference, and now it's the Elevate AEC Conference, in recognition of our new vision statement. And the first year that we rolled that out, I believe it was in Dallas, there was an immediate kind of electrification within the industry. In particular, it started small. It started within our own network and the sphere, those that were, Zweig Group raving fans to begin with. And we've watched that grow and expand as time went on. There wasn't a whole lot of convincing it felt like immediately that the idea and the electricity within this idea and the staying power was there, both for the clients that we serve, plus our staff. It really changed kind of some internal dynamics and how people were interacting, the ideas. It kind of added that extra boost of energy that may have been lacking, or we were starting to kind of lose some of that momentum. And so it was a perfect kind of reposition, reorientation towards striving for this greater purpose than we had before. And so there wasn't a whole lot of things that, from a vision standpoint, that I think we had to do to really get people bought in. But what we do is we talk about it all the time. Everything that we do is in relation to that vision statement. It's in relation to how to, what does that mean? How do we live that out? How is that maybe evolving over the course of time? And so we really pay careful attention to speak to our vision, speak to our mission statement, and all of our all hands meetings, our executive team meetings, when we're talking about new products and services, how is this aligned to those ends? And so that's super important to us. It's also really important to us when we think about culture. So you'll have to forgive me, Erica. As an engineer, I like to make an equation out of everything. So I've got an equation for culture, and the equation for culture is values plus behaviors, right? And that is, I think, you have to live out those values. They have to be in action and in the zeitgeist, if you will, of your firm, in order for that to really truly take hold and be meaningful in any way, shape, or form. And so one really quick, story, or one quick, tip of things that we did to kind of inculcate that within our organization is we do a core values and action award every single year. And so this is there's internal voting, and every single year we get to talk about who's demonstrating that, who wins the award for that year for all of the core values that we share. And so I think that's a super effective and important way that you, as an organization, as any firm, thinks about how do we connect strategy to task? How do we connect the larger purpose to kind of the tactical, operational side of just getting things done day in and day out? And you really have to make those explicit connections. And so that's what we try to do. We try to talk about it, we try to share stories, we try to share examples of how that interacts with our clients, because like our data and research team, they don't get that same kind of interaction with the industry that we do, but they're incredibly vital in just making that relationship work with our clients. And so being able to share that in various formats has been really key to making that happen for us.
That's awesome. So, just stay with that for a quick second. Share with us maybe a couple of mile markers or highlights that are proof points that you are elevating the industry.
Yeah. So again, I think our purpose is completely, is never completely attainable, right? It's something that we're going to constantly strive towards, this larger idea of purpose or existence. And so within our most recent 5-year plan, which was formalized in 2020, and so our end date for that is 2025. We've got a lot of key objectives, measurables, KPIs associated with that. And I guess quick aside, I am now not recommending whatsoever we do 5-year plans with any of our clients anymore. When I do strategic planning with our firms, it's on a 3-year cycle, and so we do a lot of kind of process oriented. This is a constant process for us internally from year to year, and there's monthly, quarterly, yearly kind of evolutions within that 5-year structure. But we're talking about some of these metrics that I'm going to share. That's the context. It was when the context was it was set for a 5-year horizon. But one of the things, one measurable is our growth objective. Our growth objective is measured in revenue, and within as of last year, at the end of 2021, we were already over halfway to that objective, which was just incredible. There were some unforeseen successes, which are the best kind, I suppose, but some unforeseen successes that really drove that significantly faster than we expected. And so shared the revenue target. But some of the other things that are really interesting are the quality of conversations, the types of conversations that we're having. So the quality of clients, both from a size perspective, a reputation, a sophistication level, that has really been elevated over the last several years. Partnerships that we formed, just partnerships with like OnStrategy is an excellent example of this, that we have this reputation such that you and your organization feels like this is going to be a valuable partnership is just incredible. I mean, and I don't know if 5 or 10 years ago that would have been anywhere kind of on the radar for us, or for you for that matter. And it's really providing that value to our clients and giving them a better experience than they've ever had before. And so those quality of partnerships, connections with academia, like for example, we've recently begun working with Phil Bernstein over at Yale, and we've got some efforts underway that I think are going to be transformational for the industry along the lines of technology. So we'll be talking more about that as time goes on this year. But also international work. So we've always worked here and there internationally. We've had clients over the entire history of our existence. But what we've seen this year is an incredible expansion of that. Kind of end of last year, beginning of this year, we're starting to form significant partnerships and do significant work and scale of work over in Europe, in the Middle East, in Australia, Asia. I mean, it's just incredible to see what this idea of elevate the industry and the path that it has put us on has resulted in. So, there's just incredible stuff like that. And for one very specific example of a fantastic milestone is the Elevate Her program that we put together, or I guess movement initiative is maybe probably a better descriptor or adjective for that concept. And Jamie Claire Kaiser, our managing principal, and one of our other leaders, Christy Zweig Group, those two really took and embraced this idea of elevate the industry, what that means. How do we solve problems like recruiting and retention challenges, recognizing some of the opportunities within, there's not a ton of women working in architecture and engineering spaces. And how do we support them? And what does that maybe look like? And that's been going for 2 years now, since that movement started. And some of the ideas coming out of that have been implemented or being put into action now are just incredible. The buzz, the excitement, the ability for us to have more meaningful conversations with some of our clients around some of those topics that can be charged at times. I think that's a real milestone and a real testament to being able to accomplish some of what we might call an elevation of the industry.
Very cool. I just love how all of that has permeated. And as you mentioned before, just the notion of tying together, connecting the strategy, the tactics, connecting, all of the pieces at the programmatic level, so impactful. So that's how you know that you have a vision. That's a home run, by the way. So let's dig a little deeper and get a little vulnerable, if that's okay for just a second.
Okay. Yeah.
I'd love for you to share with our audience the detours you might have experienced along the way. It's so easy to talk, or we always talk about successes because that's the message we want to send all the time as leaders, but we know that things don't always go perfectly. So maybe some detours, and how did you get back on track?
Yeah. So, oh boy. So I guess two things immediately maybe come to mind. One I'll share from a perspective of our leadership team. And then the other, I think, a little bit more personally. So our leadership team tends to be big thinkers, innovators. We're excited, we're passionate, we're bought into this vision of elevating the industry. And what that tends to lead for us is a little bit of a tendency with trouble prioritizing. Where we've got all these things we could do. We've got a team of people that are just incredible, smart and talented, and willing to work really, really hard. And so we have all of these things that are, it's just everything is possible in our minds, basically. And so what happens is that, we fail to prioritize sometimes on where do we need to spend our time and energy. So we all run into, things that would be, verging on the edge of burnout and being stretched too thin, maybe not paying as much attention as we should to certain things and really putting our whole selves into it. So that definitely becomes an issue. And it also is, we've got this passion for service as well, that we also serve an incredible industry. The people in the AEC universe are just incredible people from, very high integrity, very great, decent people that we're working with. And so there's this huge passion from our leadership team to serve those individuals. And what that causes for us is a little bit of a lack of, it's the kind of the cobbler's kids have no shoes, right? We don't focus on ourselves from an operational standpoint and kind of a process-driven standpoint, maybe as much as we need to sometimes. And so from that perspective, what we've done is we've looked at types of people, their behaviors, their personality kind of types within our leadership team, and figured out what are the stopgaps that we can put into place to help us do the things that maybe are blind spots or challenges for our team. So are there, making sure that we're prioritizing, making sure that we're setting up processes and checkpoints and sessions and meetings and things that are meaningful to us, that allow us to make sure we've got a guard against some of those pitfalls. Now, on a personal level, or personal perspective on this question, some of the pitfalls is I tend to be a very driven, results kind of value or value building kind of oriented individual. So for me, my own journey, sometimes that means I have trouble delegating authority, that, everything I've got to do it and I've got to keep a hold on it and have a little bit of trouble letting go. I can be directive. I can be very, perceived as tough-minded and overly direct. I don't exactly know where that stems from, but that is certainly my personality type is less on the communicative, empathy-driven communication and team building kind of stuff. And so within that, I've had to be very intentional myself. I've set up several checkpoints, several meetings, check-ins, different systems for myself that allow me to be more successful in those things, recognizing that not everybody communicates the same way that I communicate. Not everybody receives information or hears the information that I'm sharing in the same way. And so figuring out different ways to say it, different formats, and intentionally checking with the team. I mean, it's not like me, I'm just naturally not inclined to want to go out and visit everybody, right? It's just not something, it's like, let's get some work done, let's do some results, build some value, let's communicate where we need to communicate, but let's get the job done. And so I've scheduled that out. And every year I go through a process of saying, what is the minimum that I need to commit myself to? Let's plan it out early. And that allows me, that disciplined approach allows me kind of flexibility and freedom to iterate within that. So I don't feel overly constrained with it, but it's making me form those relationships and those having those conversations that maybe I wouldn't otherwise be inclined to when my head's down and just trying to get work done.
Nice. So that just strikes me that, we know this, but as the business is on a journey, so are we, right? As leaders. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I know a lot of us were taking that away like, oh, I should do that too. That's a good idea. So last question is kind of bringing home some specific tips potentially. Everybody that tunes in loves practical tips and takeaways. So if you were to share one gem, nugget of wisdom, idea about setting big, bold visions, what would be your one tip?
I'm gonna struggle with making this maybe succinct. I'll make it as succinct and concise as I possibly can. And I don't know if it's a little more subjective than an objective kind of process or exercise necessarily. You could certainly build in an exercise or something to this approach. But one of the things that I would say, I guess, is just be authentic. Take the time to ask the right questions. Don't roll your eyes. And many of us have been a part of really terrible visioning processes in the past. And so that can certainly turn people off to this whole process. And it can be transformational if we do it right. And we've got the case studies to prove that. And the people that are really able to kind of grab onto something and hold on to it and make something great and reach for the stars, if you will. This can be an incredible process that transforms your organization and drives results that you've never maybe even dreamed of. You'll see things happen, that you've never dreamed of before. So find a way to articulate it well and say it differently. That uniqueness, that being different than everybody else, not sounding the same, I think is important. And certainly don't constrain yourself too narrowly within your thought process, at least too early. There's always room to kind of narrow down and scope in on something that's a little bit more specific. But we've learned through history and case studies and data that we've collected that generally that's not the problem. Generally, the problem is we're too specific. And what happens is as we go, or at least at the vision level, I mean, we're supposed to be big and bold and action kind of oriented at this level. And at least at that level, there's tons of, case studies, whether you want to go Kodak or Xerox or a number of these other organizations that too narrowly defined who they are and what they were about, what their purpose was, that they missed out on tons of opportunity and kind of transformational change. So I'm a little long-winded, Erica. I apologize for that, but this is the stuff I get super passionate about. So I tend to rant.
It's great. That's awesome. I love that. So be authentic and take the time. I think that's great. And that's why we're such great partners, because we subscribe to the same thought process about how to do this work really, really well and to make it your own. I think that's also what was just really, really awesome, Phil, that you shared as well. So thank you so much, Phil. That was awesome. As always, to everybody, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We drop new videos every week. And of course, happy strategizing. Hey, it's me again. So Phil just touched on one of our favorite topics, creating a great organizational culture and why it's so important to driving strategic execution. He shared a really cool equation. So let's just unpack that a little further. The equation for culture. Values are the unseen, and they are what we hold to be true. Behaviors are the seen. They're above the iceberg. They're what we see above the waterline, and they're how our values are displayed or come to life. And those two things together equal culture, which in a simple way is how things are done around here. Values plus behaviors equals culture. Well, there you have it. As always, thank you for tuning in. If you like our content, subscribe. We drop videos every week. Happy strategizing.